oftentimes involved in catastrophic incidents that affect their lives.
If anyone looking for a personal and loving relationship with law, I would choose Bear Law.
At Bear Law, our goal is to turn victims into victors.
What's up, sports fans, and welcome to Talk a Lot, where we talk a lot of sports. On today's show, we have NOLA.com, the advocate, sports beat writer, longtime legend, Rod Walker. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks for having me on, man. We've been trying to do this since the start of training camp, right?
Yeah, exactly. Hey, I need you to fix your screen so that my logo is not covering up that beautiful head of yours.
Fix my screen.
Yeah, you see how that? There you go. All right, so if you're
there we go.
What?
I can never, when you turn it left, you go right, so it just kind of throws me off.
Yeah, no, you're good. You're good. Right there is perfect. So if you're jumping on and you have a couple questions, this is gonna be a quick show, about 15 minutes. Got a lot of things going on in New Orleans sports today, particularly on the high school prep level. Jesuit kicks off at Tad Gormley tonight against Slidell. Brother Martin's going to play Madison Prep tomorrow, and all of the coverage through Crescent City Sports. Ken Trahan, Ed Daniels, Friday Night Football. It's going to be a great time in New Orleans to support, student athletes all around the city and in Louisiana. So look out for that coverage. I'll be on site to report some of those games to you all. And Rod is giving me about 15 minutes to talk Saints. The big news today, Sheriff Joe Lapinto reported the Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office arrested Saints safety Marcus Maye after conducting an investigation on a road rage incident that happened on Monday. Maye was arrested for aggravated assault with a firearm, and Dennis Allen basically kept it brief by saying we're gathering more information. Rod, first off, just your thoughts on this happening, the timeliness of it, and how the Saints are going to need to react quickly, assuming that Maye is going to be out for game one in that secondary.
Yeah, it was a big surprise, I think, when most of us saw it. Nobody, obviously, you don't expect anything like that. So kind of a tough blow. And you just, I sort of tweeted something out today about the secondary. And, they've had a tough string of luck here, I guess, over the past 8 days with first you had Paulson Adebo, hurting his ankle last Wednesday in practice. And then the Chauncey Gardner-Johnson trade on Wednesday, and then you hear this today. So that's three big blows to a secondary that we've sort of raved about this secondary throughout camp, talking about how deep it is, and it is deep, and which makes this a little better than it could be, but still going to be a tough blow. But luckily for the Saints, they have a lot of guys who can step in and play some of these roles. You talk about guys like Alante Taylor and Justin Evans and Roby. So they have some pieces there that they can plug in, but just not the way you want to start the season off a week before the season opener.
No doubt, and we got the chance to speak with Alante Taylor today in the locker room. Rod, what's your take on how big of a role he's about to step into as a rookie playing the Falcons in 10 days, and with, as you mentioned, C.D. Deuce going to the Eagles and Marcus Maye's situation being unpredictable? How important is both Alante Taylor as a rookie and P.J. Williams as a veteran?
I think all those guys are going to be really important. I think P.J. is the guy that has the most experience. He may be the longest tenured guy in that secondary room. He's a guy that's been around for a while, and obviously he's a guy that started off his career playing as in corner, playing corner and slot corner. He's obviously moved to safety, last season, and that's kind of the position he wanted to focus on. But that was one of the things that we talked to Dennis Allen. I can't remember what day it was, but just someone asked him about that flexibility, just having guys who can move around and do different things, and I think that's a good thing about this secondary. You do have guys that can do both. They can play safety and they can play corner, and that's what they're going to have to use right now. And Alante Taylor, he didn't really get to play as much during. He was battling an injury here toward the end of preseason, but he's a guy that, as a rookie, he's going to be expected to come in and play right away. I would expect.
Rod, from your long tenure writing and covering the Saints, and I know your primary focus started in the high school level. And obviously LSU and the Saints have always been something that you've covered, but this is the first year for you, just like it's the first year for Dennis Allen as Saints head coach. It's the first year for you to cover a team. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, to cover a team with a first-year head coach, let's call it his first-year quarterback, and all these first-year players, Saints players, first year on the Saints, like Olave, like Jarvis Landry, like Tyrann Mathieu. The city of New Orleans connection with all those guys. But start with Dennis Allen for me, just how you write about him, how you cover him, and how he's different from Sean Payton.
I think one of the biggest differences I've noticed is just his and I think we kind of joke about it sometimes, but just his transparency with injuries. You know, Sean would really keep that stuff inside, and so you really didn't know unless you saw a player walking in the locker room with a boot on. That's the only way you would know what the injury was, because Sean just kind of kept that stuff a secret. And Dennis has been a lot more open with injuries. He'll let you know. You ask him, he'll usually tell you at least what the injury is. You may not know how long he's going to be out. So that's a little different. And I think I know people in the media and they both appreciate that transparency. I think for the most part, things have stayed the same as far as things that we can notice. I mean, and that was why they hired Dennis in the first place. I mean, they wanted to sort of keep things consistent, and this wasn't a team that needed a overhaul. They're not coming off of a 4-13 season and need to rebuild. I mean, this is a team that sort of want to continue what they've done under Sean Payton era. So that's why they hired Dennis Allen in the first place, because he obviously knows how Sean ran things. So I don't think we'll see a lot of differences as far as what we see from the media standpoint. But again, the thing about the injuries is something that's it's really noticeable. And I think I guess even like some of the availability has kind of started on at the time that they said it was. Sometimes with Sean, it may have, they may have said, hey, we're going to talk to Sean at 1:15, and you may not talk to him until 1:30. But with Dennis, everything's been a little, more prompt. And so we appreciate that as well.
Do you feel like Dennis Allen has as much respect this early from the players?
I think so. And again, I think it just goes back to the fact that he hasn't come in and made any wholesale changes that I've seen. And few players I've talked to, I mean, they seem to, like what Dennis is doing. And but obviously, I mean, the only thing that's going to really determine that is wins and losses. I mean, forget how Dennis is in comparison to Sean. If they're not winning games, all that goes out of the window really fast.
We're going to go to our helm paint and decorating comment section here. And obviously, Debo the God chiming in, and it actually makes me think of Debo Jones, who I went to Jesuit with, who's going to be playing for the Falcons in Game 1. Deion Jones goes by Debo, but Debo the God here, a different Debo, asking why'd we let CJ go for this, Rod?
I think the main thing, obviously we've sort of heard a little bit early in training camp about the differences in, well, we didn't know what the dollar amounts were, but there was some contract issues, I guess. Chauncey was up, his contract's up next year, and he wanted to, try to get that extension and get some more money. And from what I've heard, I mean, the Saints and him were pretty far apart. And this is a guy that he was a really big part of this defense. And but I think, again, going back to the depth of this secondary, I think this is a secondary that Dennis Allen and his coaching staff felt like, hey, we can plug some of these other guys in, and it won't be much of a drop-off, if any. I don't think they think it'll be a drop-off, actually. And they feel like they can do that. And because if you're not, you're going to probably lose CJ next year anyway and not get anything for him in free agency, So this way they were able to get something for him. Not a whole lot, but they got something for him. And, again, I think that the main thing that with Dennis Allen, they felt like they could make this trade and the defense not drop off any, because I think they really like these guys like Bradley Roby and these other guys in the secondary. And but you look at what happened today with Marcus Maye, then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, now CJ's gone. Now some of that depth is gone. So that's something that I'm sure fans are concerned about.
And I think it's still safe to say, Marcus Maye is a huge loss if he's not playing Game 1, Game 2, however long this may be. And a lot of this, as I said, is unpredictable. But I still think the secondary's in good shape. You would assume that – guys like Justin Evans and Daniel Sorensen would also be expected to step in at some point in that safety role, along with PJ Williams and Alante Taylor, playing nickel and bouncing around. I think those guys can play a plethora of secondary positions, but PJ Williams is a little bit more diverse. We asked Alante Taylor today, and he was kind of quick to say, safety is not really something I prefer. And so I don't think you would hear that answer from PJ Williams. I think PJ Williams is all about put me wherever and I'm going to do my job. And that's fine. I mean, Alante Taylor's a rookie. He's played cornerback his whole life. That's fine that he wants to specialize in that position and also know that he can play the nickel and the slot corner position. Yeah. So, Rod, we joke about it sometimes, not just with Dennis Allen, with anybody, coach speak. Coaches are going to give pretty much expected answers in situations like this. And that's what we heard today. It wasn't beating around the bush. It wasn't expansive. It wasn't reluctant by any means. It was just, we're gathering more information. We just heard about this morning. We just heard about it at the same time it was reported, right? So that's okay if you give me that answer too. And if it's just, I need to know more information. But Debo, who's joining us, thanks for joining us again, Debo, is asking, basically, I mean, I'll rephrase this question, but would you, based on what you hear, could you see it as a possibility that Marcus Maye could get cut from this team?
Well, I think, again, I mean, I am like Dennis Allen. We do not know enough information yet about this, but you do have to consider, I mean, this is a guy that has a pending DUI charge from his time at the Jets. That's also, that's pending. I think he had a court date last week and he got pushed back. So, that's, and again, I'm not making any accusations yet because we don't know enough details about today, but I think there will probably be some concerns there if this comes out and we find out more information and we find out that he did do this. But right now, I mean, I'm with Dennis Allen. You have to wait and see and let everything play out. But that's, it could possibly be, end up being two really, big blemishes on his resume if this is true.
I want to talk a little bit about Chris Olave and just your perspective of kind of the hype around New Orleans with LSU and Florida State coming to town to close out, Rod. And I look forward to many more quick conversations like this throughout the season, man. It's crazy that we're 10 days away. It feels like training camp just flew by and the heat absolutely kicked all of our asses. But Daniel Sorensen, along with Justin Evans, comes from a team that is in the business of winning, the Chiefs and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, respectively, with Sorensen and Evans. Debo's saying Sorensen's going to be starting. Can you correct him, if you will? Because I don't think that he's going to get the start. What would you say right now if I gave you a blank depth chart with defensive secondary to fill out, and I said Marcus Maye's not there and CD Deuce isn't there, but everybody else is healthy?
Yeah, I think and we're assuming Debo's healthy. So I think Roby can play slot. I think PJ is probably the guy at safety just because of his experience in his defense.
So you got PJ Williams at strong safety, Tyrann Mathieu at free safety, Roby, Adebo, and Lattimore at cornerback. And then if you need a slot corner, you have Taylor?
No, I think Roby.
Oh, so you're just saying three cornerbacks?
Yeah, and then PJ and.
I mean, would you ever need four cornerbacks on the field?
Yeah, I mean, if you do, I think if you go to that, I think Alante is probably he's your guy. But he'd be my guy. I don't see Sorensen as a starter. To be honest, like Sorensen was a guy we were doing our 53-man projections, and I barely had him on there. But he's such a good special teams guy that I think you have to, you include him. But I don't see him as a starter in this secondary. Not in week one anyway. If he's starting, I think that means some of these other guys that I just mentioned have been injured or something has happened to them as well. And I think those guys I just named, I think this team is solid with those guys. I think as long as you got a guy like Tyrann and Marshawn, and Marshawn and Adebo have been really impressive throughout. So I think this team will be fine, which says a lot about this depth, because if 2 or 3 years ago you told me the Saints were going to lose a safety and a starting slot corner, this team was probably in trouble. But the fact that they can kind of rebound from that this time says a lot about the depth that we've been talking about all training camp.
Well, right. I mean, it says a lot about the preparation and the planning and the defensive mindset of Dennis Allen, knowing that these things could happen, whether, whether he's just a really good bettor that something crazy or some crisis may happen, with Marcus Maye, or I don't even know if they had any info that, something like this could happen. Obviously, and I'm more talking about the court case being postponed, not this recent news.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I agree. And I think we're going to be okay in the secondary regardless of Marcus Maye's status. Now, remind me, Rod, because I'm showing a little bit of my inexperience here, and that I'm more of an offense fantasy football focused guy who only kind of, likes talking about the skilled players. But, I love Lewis Kidd, the story behind, the only undrafted free agent to make the team. But real quick, just to follow up, what is the situation that could require more than 2 cornerbacks or more than 2 safeties? Like, what is the offensive package that would require more than 5 defensive backs on the field?
I think
what would that look like?
I'm just trying to think of which teams. Tampa Bay, they have a lot of guys they can throw out there at you, and I think a team like that, you may have to bring an extra corner on the field. So it just depends on what the opposing team is doing, and but that's the thing about this defense. I think they have the flexibility to be able to do that when they need to. So I don't see that as a huge problem. Again, but this is a team that can't afford a lot more injuries. I mean, they're sort of at the limit now. Like, they don't need any other altercations. No more.
We can't take another breaking news report tomorrow morning on anybody involved on the Saints, but especially in the secondary.
Right.
So I guess the only other time you would have 3 safeties is like a man up 3 deep or prevent type play. And I guess you would have Justin Evans, Matthew, and Sorensen or PJ back there, which makes adding Justin Evans to the roster all the more, comfortable, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was one of those roster spots. I know Mickey Loomis talked about it during his in-game interview, how this was against the Chargers the other night. Mickey sort of pointed out that, hey, Justin's playing well. He's going to make us think about keeping another safety. And, here we are a few days later, and saying that they made a good decision by doing that because they're going to need him.
Final thought, and then we'll talk Chris Olave for 2 minutes to close out. Thanks for everybody who's joined us. Be sure to check out Talk a Lot on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all the outlets and anywhere you get your podcasts. We're going to have Rod on as much as possible 10 days away from Saints at Falcons in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome, the second Mercedes-Benz Superdome, not the real one. This is an interesting thought, and I don't want to talk too much about it, but hypothetical. I mean, really no point in talking about it, but it's an interesting thought, so I'll throw it at you. If this would have happened, Marcus Maye, I mean, the incident happened on Monday. If this would have happened on Monday, do you still think CJ Gardner-Johnson would be on the team?
Yeah, because, I mean, this happened before the trade.
Right.
But we didn't find out about it until after the trade.
Crazy thought.
It is, yeah. And I don't know, man. That's really I saw the question when it popped up on there, and I mean, that's something to it probably makes you, at least think differently about it, and especially considering what they got back for. But I don't know. I mean, if Dennis Allen felt like, it's time to part ways with CJ, then, maybe it still goes on. But it definitely, sort of changes the dynamics of it all, I feel like.
Yeah, and a lot of this has to go into salary cap, and I'm sure Rod's written about and all the team at NOLA.com and all of the great sports, Saints beat writers that we have in the media circuit here. But, you can go look at Jeff Duncan and Luke Johnson and Rod Walker's reports on how the salary cap and how the money end of things changes, as we get rid of CJ Gardner-Johnson and get the little value from a draft pick out of him. But Rod, to close out on a more positive note, how big of an impact and I got him on my fantasy football team. I'm going to draft him in my draft on Monday. I got like 3 or 4 fantasy football teams. But how big of an impact can Chris Olave really bring to this team? And do you think it's going to be one of those situations where like every other game, someone else is a star? Like Olave could break out game 1, like a rookie always does in week 1 of the NFL. You know, Jamar Chase, I think it was last year, or forget who it was, but you know, it took Jamar Chase a couple weeks, I think. Is it Michael Thomas dominates this game, Jarvis Landry dominates the next game, Chris Olave, or do you think Olave is going to be a consistent like 5-catch, 80-yard guy?
Man, this offense has so many weapons that I don't think that they'll ever. Well, I think a lot of games is just going to be. You'll have the Alvin Kamara game. You'll have the Michael Thomas game. You'll have the Jarvis Landry game. You'll have the Chris Olave game. But I think for a rookie to come into a situation like this, I mean, we've seen throughout training camp how good he is, how dangerous he is, how fast he is. For a rookie to come in and get a chance to be on a team like this with those weapons around him, I think it makes his job a whole lot easier. I don't think he'll put up Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson type numbers just because of the pieces around him. I mean, there's only one football out there. And, so you can't just, if you had 5 footballs, everybody could get one on every play, but it doesn't work like that. So
you've loved asking that question throughout training camp. Is this the most weapons we've had that you've ever seen?
Yeah, man, because I think most of these guys, you would say it is. I mean, if you're
you would say it is, right?
Yeah, I mean, since I've been around this team, yeah, I mean, this is, they have a lot of, not just a lot of pieces, but a lot of really good pieces. Whenever you're top 3 receivers from a season ago or now, all of a sudden the 4, 5, and 6 receive on your roster, that alone says a lot. And I mean, again, we're talking about Alvin Kamara, and we haven't even mentioned Taysom Hill, who he's looked good in camp as well as a tight end. So I think this team can really be good. I think with Jameis's strong arm, this team will be able to do some things that maybe didn't get a chance to do in the Drew Brees era, as far as especially toward the end of the Drew Brees era when his arm wasn't what it used to be. And I think with Jameis, I mean, this offense can really open up this year. And I don't think his offense has to be, I mean, if they're explosive, I mean, that's even better. But I think this defense has a chance to be really good, that the offense doesn't have to put up 30 points a game. I mean,
right.
They can put up 20, 21, 24 points and probably be good enough to win, because you're not going to just drive the ball up and down on this defense, assuming these guys in the secondary are back, and which is kind of how this conversation started. But they're going to
yeah, no. I mean, look, guys like the Panthers and the Falcons, I think we can handle even with a diminished secondary. But the Bucs are going to be a tough team to hold to a shutout without CD Deuce, or to hold to 10 or 17 points if we don't have everybody back fully healthy and away from any extracurricular activity. And so, Rod, thanks so much for joining us. I did want to ask, can we go on record saying that Rod Walker's saying this is the most weapons, even more than the Jimmy Graham, Darren Sproles era?
I don't know if I'll say that quite yet. Okay. Let me watch him play one game. Because we still haven't really seen we haven't seen Michael Thomas in the preseason, so we just haven't seen how it's going to all work. But man, I would like to think so.
Close out for us with a prediction here. You said we're going to have a Michael Thomas game. We're obviously going to have an Alvin Kamara game, a Jarvis Landry game, a Chris Olave game. Are we going to have a Taysom Hill game? And how many touchdowns, if you drafted Taysom Hill as your tight end in fantasy football, how many touchdowns, give me a prediction, will he score this season?
Man, that's tough.
Doesn't matter catching, doesn't matter running. I don't care if he returns a freaking punt for a touchdown. 17 games.
I'm going to go with 6 or 7.
So if it's over under 6.5, you're taking the over? He's number 7. You got to give him 7 touchdowns.
All right, let's go with 7 then. There we go.
I convinced Rod Walker to go over 6.5.
I got to write that down somewhere so I remember to see at the end of the season how many.
Don't worry, brother. We're recording.
Okay.
Rod Walker, keep up with him on Twitter at Rod Walker NOLA. Is that correct?
Yeah.
At Rod Walker NOLA. For Rod, I'm Jack Collada, and this is Talk Collada. We are signing out. Saints play the Falcons in 10 days. Thanks again, brother.
All right, no problem, man.
Peace, y'all.